The Sunday brunch crowd at Meridian was already in full swing when I arrived. Mom had chosen the restaurant for her 58th birthday. Upscale but not pretentious, with large windows overlooking the park and a menu that satisfied everyone's dietary restrictions. I was 15 minutes early as usual. I spotted my family already seated at a large table near the back. Mom and Dad, my brother Chris and his wife Jennifer, my younger sister Hannah, and my aunt and uncle. There she is. Mom waved me over. We were wondering if you'd make it. I said I'd be here, I replied, sliding into the empty chair between Hannah and my aunt. Well, you've been so busy with your projects lately, Mom said, sharing a glance with Dad. We weren't sure you could spare the time. I made time, I said simply. Chris was already dressed for success. Expensive suit, power tie, the kind of outfit that announced corporate executive before he even opened his mouth. He'd been at TechCorp for 6 years, working his way up from analyst to senior director. It was all he talked about. Glad you could join us, little sister, he said with a smirk. Take a break from your entrepreneurial adventures? Something like that. Jennifer giggled. Chris, be nice. Not everyone wants to work in a corporate environment. True, Chris agreed. Some people prefer the freedom of self-employment. Even if it means less stability, no benefits, uncertain income. Chris, Dad interrupted mildly. It's your mother's birthday. Let's keep things positive. I am being positive. I think it's great that Isabella is following her passions, even if they're not exactly profitable yet. Chris raised his mimosa. To Mom and to family who support each other no matter what career path we choose. Everyone drank. I took a small sip of water. The server came by to take our orders. As we waited for food, the conversation turned to Chris's recent promotion. Senior Vice President of Strategic Operations, Chris announced proudly. The youngest SVP in TechCorp's history. That's wonderful, honey, Mom gushed. We're so proud of you. 32 years old and already an SVP, Dad added. That's remarkable achievement, son. It's been a lot of hard work, Chris said, though his tone suggested he found it easy. But TechCorp recognizes talent. They know who their key players are. What exactly does an SVP of Strategic Operations do? Hannah asked. Chris launched into an explanation that was clearly practiced. Optimizing workflows, streamlining processes, driving innovation, synergizing cross-functional teams. All the corporate buzzwords delivered with absolute confidence. I stayed quiet, cutting into the fruit plate I'd ordered. And the best part, Chris continued, is that I'm now in the C-suite meetings. I'm reporting directly to Mr. Davidson, our CEO. He's brilliant. Visionary. I'm learning so much from him. Will you be CEO someday? My aunt asked. That's the plan, Chris said. I'm positioning myself as his successor. Another 10 years, maybe less, and I'll be running TechCorp. Imagine that, Mom said, looking at Chris with pure adoration. Our son is CEO. What about you, Isabella? Jennifer asked, clearly trying to include me. How's your consulting business going? It's going well, I said. Still working from home? Chris asked. Or did you finally get an office? I have an office. Oh good. Where? Downtown. The financial district. Really? Chris looked surprised. That's expensive real estate for a small operation. How can you afford that? I manage. I mean, no judgment, but I've looked at office spaces downtown. Even a small suite runs $4,000 to $5,000 a month. That's $60,000 a year just in rent. Can your consulting really support that overhead? Everyone was looking at me now. I set down my fork carefully. I do okay, I said. Okay enough for downtown rent? Bella, are you going into debt for this? Because there's no shame in working from home. Most consultants do. The overhead costs for a physical office rarely make sense unless you're bringing in serious revenue. I'm not in debt. But still, Chris pressed, downtown office space is a luxury. It's about image, not necessity. I get it, you want to look successful, feel professional. But fiscally, it's probably not the smartest move. Chris, Hannah said quietly, maybe we should change the subject. I'm just trying to help. Chris protested. Look, Bella, I know you're proud of your business. But I've been in the corporate world for years now. I understand financial strategy. And from a pure numbers perspective, you're probably overextending yourself. I appreciate your concern, I said evenly. I'm serious. If you need advice on scaling back expenses while maintaining your client relationships, I'm happy to help. We have consultants at TechCorp. I know how their economics work. Most of them work from home, maybe rent conference rooms by the hour when they need to meet clients. It's much more sustainable. Noted. You know what, Chris said, warming to his topic. I could probably even help you get some clients. TechCorp uses outside consultants sometimes. What's your specialty again? Data analysis. Business acquisitions and corporate restructuring, I said. Oh, well that's pretty advanced work. Do you have credentials for that? Because corporate restructuring usually requires significant experience, maybe an MBA from a top program. I have the necessary qualifications. I'm not doubting you, Chris said, though his tone suggested otherwise. I'm just saying that's a competitive field. The consultants we bring in for that kind of work usually come from major firms. McKinsey, Bain, Boston Consulting Group. They have teams of analysts, established methodologies, proven track records. I understand. So you're competing against those firms? Solo. Sometimes. Chris laughed. Well, that's insane. Those firms have resources you can't match. They have research departments, data analytics teams, industry connections. How can a one-person operation possibly compete? I don't know, Chris. How do I compete? I took another sip of water. You tell me. I'm being serious here. I'm worried about you. This playing businesswoman thing is fine as a hobby, but if you're trying to make a real career out of it, you need to be realistic about your limitations. Playing businesswoman, I repeated softly. You know what I mean. These little projects trying to build something from nothing. It's admirable in its way. But some of us have real corporate jobs with real stability and real career trajectories. There's a difference between being self-employed and being successfully employed. Mom reached over and patted my hand. Honey, Chris is just trying to look out for you. We all are. We know you're trying very hard and we're proud of your initiative. But it's okay to admit when something isn't working out. There's no shame in getting a regular job. With benefits, Dad added. And a retirement plan. At your age, you should be thinking about your future. I am thinking about my future, I said. Then think seriously about what Chris is offering, Mom said. Maybe he can help you get your foot in the door somewhere. With his connections, he could probably find you something stable. I don't need. Stop being so stubborn, Chris interrupted. Pride isn't going to pay your bills, Bella. I'm offering to help you. Why won't you let me? Because I don't need your help. Everyone needs help sometimes. That's what family is for. I was about to respond when I noticed someone entering the restaurant. A man in his early 60s, silver hair, expensive suit, commanding presence. He was looking around the restaurant like he was searching for someone. My stomach tightened. Oh, not here. Not now. But Mr. Davidson had already spotted our table. His face lit up with recognition and he started walking toward us. Oh my God, Chris said, sitting up straighter. That's my CEO. That's Mr. Davidson. What's he doing here? Maybe he's here for brunch? Jennifer suggested. He must have seen me and decided to come say hello, Chris said, already standing up, smoothing his tie. This is perfect. Mom, Dad, you're about to meet the man I've been telling you about. Mr. Davidson reached our table. Chris stepped forward, hand extended. Mr. Davidson. What a surprise. I'm here with my family for my mother's birthday. Let me introduce you. But Mr. Davidson walked right past Chris's outstretched hand. He walked around the table directly to me and stopped. Ms. Martinez, he said, and there was genuine nervousness in his voice. I didn't know you'd be here. I'm so sorry to interrupt what's clearly a family celebration. The table had gone silent. Everyone was staring. I set down my napkin slowly. Mr. Davidson. This is unexpected. I wouldn't normally intrude, but since you're here. He glanced at the rest of the table, seeming to realize he had an audience. Could we perhaps speak privately for just a moment? About the quarterly report you requested. The quarterly report? Chris's voice was strangled. What quarterly report? Mr. Davidson finally seemed to notice Chris. Oh, Mr. Martinez. I didn't see you there. Hello. Hello. Chris looked like he'd been slapped. Sir, what's going on? Why are you talking to my sister about quarterly reports? Mr. Davidson's eyebrows rose. Your sister? This is your sister. He looked between us, confused. I didn't realize you two were related. We are, I confirmed. Chris works at TechCorp. Senior Vice President of Strategic Operations. Yes, of course, Mr. Davidson said, though he still looked baffled. I know Mr. Martinez. Excellent employee. I didn't realize the connection. What connection? Dad asked. Someone please explain what's happening. Mr. Davidson looked at me. They don't know. It hasn't come up, I said calmly. Know what? Mom demanded. Isabella, what is going on? I took a breath. Mr. Davidson is the CEO of TechCorp. He's also someone I've been working with professionally. Working with? Chris's voice rose. On what? Perhaps we should discuss this privately, Mr. Davidson suggested again, looking increasingly uncomfortable with the family audience. No, I said. It's fine. They were going to find out eventually. I looked at Chris. You asked how a one-person operation could compete with major consulting firms. The answer is, By acquiring the companies those consulting firms advise. Silence. What are you talking about? Chris asked. I turned to Mr. Davidson. Would you like to explain or should I? He cleared his throat. Perhaps you should. This is your family. I nodded. 6 months ago, TechCorp was approached by a private investment firm about a potential acquisition. That firm was mine. I've been conducting due diligence, reviewing financials, analyzing operations, and preparing for a full takeover. Chris's face had gone white. Takeover. The deal closed 3 weeks ago, I continued. I now own 73% of TechCorp's outstanding shares, which makes me the majority shareholder and effectively your boss. The silence was deafening. That's impossible, Chris whispered. It's very possible, Mr. Davidson said gently. Ms. Martinez's firm, Apex Capital Holdings, acquired controlling interest 3 weeks ago Tuesday. The board approved the deal unanimously. We announced it internally on Wednesday. There was a company-wide email. I don't remember any email about, Chris stopped. Wait, that email about new ownership structure? That was her. That was me, I confirmed. But, Chris was floundering. That can't be right. You're a consultant. You work from home. You have little projects. I did work from home, I said. When I was starting out. That was 7 years ago. Since then, I've built a private equity firm that manages approximately $2.8 billion in assets. TechCorp was my third acquisition this year. Mom's mimosa glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the table. 2.8 billion, Dad repeated. With AB, I confirmed. Jennifer was looking at her phone. Oh my God. It's true. I'm looking at the announcement. Apex Capital Holdings acquired TechCorp in a $340 million deal. And here, she turned her phone around showing a photo. This is you. Isabella Martinez, founder and CEO of Apex Capital Holdings. $340 million? Chris's voice was barely audible. The company was valued at $340 million, I corrected. I acquired 73% of shares for approximately $248 million. The remaining 27% is still held by the original investors and employee stock options. You paid $248 million, Chris said slowly, for my company. For a company you work at, I corrected. It was never yours, Chris. Mr. Davidson shifted uncomfortably. Ms. Martinez, about that quarterly report. Email it to me, I said. We can review the numbers on Monday. Of course. Again, I apologize for the interruption. I'll leave you to your family celebration. He nodded to everyone. Happy birthday, Mrs. Martinez. It was lovely to meet you all. He left quickly, probably grateful to escape the tension. Nobody spoke for a long moment. Then Chris found his voice. Why didn't you tell us? When should I have told you? I asked. When you were explaining how corporate hierarchy works. When you were offering to help me get clients. When you called my work little projects and suggested I was playing businesswoman. I didn't mean. Yes, you did. You've been patronizing me for years, Chris. You and everyone else at this table. Every family dinner, every phone call, every conversation, you've all made it clear that you think I'm struggling, that I'm not successful, that I need help. We were trying to support you, Mom protested weakly. You were trying to fix me, I corrected. There's a difference. Support means respecting someone's choices. Fixing means assuming they're broken. But you never said anything, Dad said. You never told us about your success. I tried, I said. 3 years ago I told you I'd made my first major acquisition. You asked if I was sure I wasn't overextending myself. 2 years ago I mentioned I was managing several companies. You asked if I'd considered getting a real job with benefits. Last year I invited you all to see my office. Nobody came. We thought. Mom trailed off. You thought what? I asked. That a downtown office in the financial district was just for show? That I was wasting money trying to look successful instead of actually being successful. Chris was still staring at me like I was a stranger. You own my company. I own a majority stake in TechCorp, yes. So you're my boss. Technically, you report to Mr. Davidson, who reports to the board, which I control. So yes, in a structural sense, I'm several levels above you in the corporate hierarchy. This is insane, Chris said. How is this possible? Where did you get hundreds of millions of dollars? I started with $50,000 of savings from my first job out of college, I said. I made some smart investments. Small acquisitions that I could afford. I grew those companies, sold them for profit, reinvested. Each deal was bigger than the last. I've been doing this for 12 years, Chris. While you were climbing the corporate ladder at one company, I was buying and selling companies. 12 years, Hannah said softly. You've been doing this since you were 22? Since I was 21, actually. I made my first acquisition at 22. Why didn't you tell us? Mom asked again. Because of this, I gestured at the table. This reaction. The shock, the disbelief, the assumption that there must be some mistake. I knew that if I told you, you wouldn't believe me. Or you'd think I was exaggerating. Or you'd worry I was doing something illegal or risky. Are you? Dad asked. Taking risks, I mean. All business involves risk. But I'm careful. I do thorough due diligence. I have a team of attorneys, accountants, and analysts. I don't make impulsive decisions. A team, Chris repeated. How big is your team? 43 employees. Most work remotely, but I have a core group of 12 in the downtown office. The downtown office you said you could barely afford, Chris said bitterly. I never said that. You assumed it. I actually own the building. Apex Capital bought it 4 years ago. We use 3 floors for our operations and lease out the rest. Jennifer was still scrolling through her phone. There are articles about you. Forbes, Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal. They call you one of the most aggressive young investors in the private equity space. There's a whole profile here about your strategy of acquiring undervalued tech companies and restructuring them for growth. That's my core business model, yes. The article says your net worth is estimated at over $400 million. Estimates vary depending on asset valuation, I said. But that's in the range. $400 million, Mom whispered. Our daughter is worth $400 million. Your daughter runs a successful business, I corrected. The net worth is a consequence of that, not the achievement itself. Why are you being so calm about this? Chris suddenly exploded. You just revealed you've been lying to us for years. I never lied. I just didn't correct your false assumptions. Same thing. Is it? 'Cause I remember trying to tell you about my work. You weren't interested. You changed the subject. You made jokes about my little projects. I learned very quickly that you didn't want to know about my success unless it fit your narrative of what success should look like. So this is my fault? Chris's voice rose. You're blaming me for your secrecy? I'm saying you created an environment where I felt more comfortable being invisible than being honest. That's not fair. Isn't it? 5 minutes ago you were offering to help me get clients. You were explaining how I couldn't compete with major firms. You were suggesting I should get a real job. You were so convinced of my inadequacy that it never occurred to you to actually ask about my business. Chris stood up abruptly. I need some air. Chris, wait, Jennifer started, but he was already walking away, heading for the exit. Jennifer looked at me apologetically. He's going to need time to process this. I understand. Do you? She gathered her purse. Because from where I'm sitting, you just publicly humiliated your brother. On your mother's birthday, no less. I didn't mean to, I started. Didn't you? Jennifer stood up. You could have told him privately. You could have pulled him aside months ago when the acquisition was happening. Instead, you waited until his CEO approached you in front of the whole family. That wasn't an accident, Isabella. That was a choice. She left to follow Chris. Hannah reached over and squeezed my hand. That was intense. I didn't plan for Mr. Davidson to show up, I said. But you could have handled it differently, Mom said quietly. You could have excused yourself, talked to him privately, not made a scene at my birthday brunch. Would that have been better? I asked. Or would it just have delayed this conversation? Would Chris have felt less humiliated if I'd told him privately that I own his company? Would you have felt less shocked if I'd sat you all down separately to explain my net worth? Maybe, Dad said. Or maybe we would have had a chance to process it without an audience. I looked around the table at my family, shocked, confused, some angry, some hurt. This was exactly why I'd kept quiet for so long. I'm sorry, I said finally. I'm sorry Mr. Davidson showed up. I'm sorry this happened at Mom's birthday. I'm sorry you all feel blindsided. But I'm not sorry for building my business. And I'm not sorry for not announcing it louder or more proudly or in a way that fit your expectations. We just wish we'd known, Mom said, tears in her eyes. We're your family. We should have known. You could have known if you'd asked. But you never did. You were too busy assuming. Aunt Linda, who'd been silent this whole time, finally spoke up. For what it's worth, I think it's incredible. What you've built. How you did it. I'm proud of you, Isabella. Thank you, I said quietly. But your aunt is right about one thing, Dad said. You've built something incredible. The question now is, where do we go from here? That depends, I said. Can you accept who I actually am instead of who you thought I was? Can you respect my success even though it looks different from what you expected? Can you forgive us for not seeing it sooner? Mom countered. I thought about that. I can forgive you. But I need things to change. No more comments about my career choices. No more assumptions about my finances. No more offers to help me find a real job. I need you to trust that I know what I'm doing. We can do that, Dad said. We will do that. And Chris? I asked. Chris will come around, Hannah said. He's hurt right now and his ego is bruised. But he'll realize eventually that your success doesn't diminish his. I hope so. We finished brunch in a subdued mood. Mom tried to redirect conversation to other topics, but the energy was gone. We sang happy birthday, she blew out candles on a cake she barely touched, and then everyone made excuses to leave early. As I was walking to my car, Hannah caught up with me. Hey, she said. That was rough. Yeah. For what it's worth, I always knew you were doing something bigger than they realized. You had that look. What look? Quiet confidence. Like you knew something nobody else did. She bumped my shoulder. I'm glad it's out now. Even if it was messy. Me too, I admitted. I'm tired of pretending to be less than I am. Good. Don't ever do that again. He hugged me. I'm proud of you, Bella. Always have been. It took 3 weeks before Chris finally called me. Can we talk? He asked. Face to face. We met at a coffee shop, neutral territory. He looked tired, older somehow. I've been thinking a lot, he said without preamble. About what happened. About what you said. And I owe you an apology. Chris. No, let me finish. He took a breath. You were right. I was patronizing. I assumed you were struggling because you weren't succeeding the way I understood success. And I never bothered to actually learn about your work because I'd already decided it wasn't real. Thank you for saying that. I'm embarrassed, he admitted. I spent years talking down to my boss. Do you know how humiliating that is? You weren't talking down to your boss, I said gently. You were talking down to your sister. That's different. And worse, actually. He nodded slowly. You're right. It is worse. He looked up at me. Can we start over? Can I actually learn about what you do, who you are, without all my assumptions? I'd like that, I said. And for the record, he added, I'm proud of you. What you've built is extraordinary. I just wish I'd seen it sooner. Better late than never, I said. We talked for 2 hours. Really talked for the first time in years. About my business, my strategy, my goals. About his career, his ambitions, his insecurities. About being siblings who'd somehow lost sight of each other. It wasn't perfect. Old patterns don't disappear overnight. But it was a start. And that's all any of us can really ask for. A chance to start again with clearer eyes and more honest hearts. Indeed.